we all go through experiences in life. Some good, some bad. Every experience teaches us something. And when you're going through the experience, sometimes it's very difficult to sort of extract the learning from that experience at that point in time. That becomes obvious to you only in hindsight. When you look back upon that experience, maybe a day later, a week later, a year later, you start to understand the significance of that experience and what it taught you. I have picked 12 of those stories. They are important stories, they are important lessons that I think have helped me in my life and career, and hopefully you can take something out of it for yourself, right? I hadn't yet started college when this thing happened, but I was in that period of deciding what I really wanted to do. I had taken up science almost as a default. My family is full of engineers, so it was almost like a default path that I was going on to become an engineer, but I wasn't clear what I really wanted to do. One of my dad's friends shared this very important lesson with me, I think, which has been very foundational. He says, look, when you go through life, you are blessed if you get to do what you love. But the reality is that you will not always get to do what you love. And so it's important to learn to love what you do, right? And I think if you look at our own daily lives, whatever you are passionate about, you might do that 10, 20, 30% of the time, right? 70% of the time you are doing things that you're not necessarily passionate about, but that's the requirement of the job. So the question is, how well you do that? That's important. How much energy, how much commitment you give towards those things that you are not necessarily passionate about. So do what you love if you're fortunate, and obviously if you don't get to do what you love, at least learn to love what you do so you can always give your best. And that's important because in your life, everything is going to be built on the foundation of what you have done up until that point in time. And you can't give it your best and you can't do your best if you don't like what you're doing, right? If you know what you love, pursue your passion, pursue your dream, do what you love. But recognize the fact that you will not always have that privilege and that luxury. And whatever you need to do, give it your best, because everything you do is a foundation for what lies ahead. And you can only build on a foundation of excellence. My first performance evaluation was a satisfactory rating. And my manager sat me down and I said, hey, look, I think I did a good job. I gave my best. Every project was delivered on or ahead of schedule with good quality. What's missing? Why am I satisfactory? And my manager says, I don't think you've given it your best effort. I said, why? He says, because I see that you spend a lot of time walking around in the office. Now, the backstory of that is that I don't do my best thinking sitting at my desk. So whenever I am faced with a difficult problem, and if I need to find a solution to that, my natural instinct is to get up and start walking. And I can keep thinking and I can keep solving that problem in my head. My manager at that time misinterpreted that action of mine and said, I'm wasting my time, right? I'm not working hard enough and I'm not doing as much as I could do. So my first lesson in perception is reality. Never ignore that. Never ignore how people perceive you. And in a leadership role, that becomes even more important. Because we are sending subliminal messages to people around us through our actions. So this is one of those things that we need to be very conscious about, the perception that our actions have on people around us. I would never go by perceptions. I will try to understand reality, right? I would not form perceptions just based on one or two data points that I might observe. I'll really try to understand what's going on and not operate just purely based on those superficial perceptions. As a leader, that's an ethos I have developed. No matter who you work with, everybody can teach you something, right? And I've always learned from my managers. From some I learned what to do, and from some I learned what not to do. So this is one of those examples. 1990, different manager, really, really good manager, learned a lot from this person. Went up to him and I said, look, I had a bad start last year. I'm committed to doing well. I want to do well, right? I want to get an exceeds rating in my next make up, to vindicate and to make up for what happened last year. Tell me what I need to do. That was his answer. He said, surprise me. And I was totally confused. I said, what do you mean surprise you? Honestly, I didn't understand at that point in time what he meant. It took me a while to understand. I did have a couple of follow-up discussions with him. Said, look, I don't understand what you're telling me. Right? What do you mean surprise me? And the essence of the story is, as managers, we are often asked this question, right, by our team members. What do I need to do to get an exceeds? And the reality is a manager can never answer that question. In fact, a manager should never answer that question. At best, what a manager can tell an individual is what the manager needs the individual to do to fulfill what the company needs or for that project needs, right? And obviously, it has to be of good quality. It can't be like, okay, if you do an average job, it's meets or something like that. I mean, you really have to do a good quality job so that the project can be delivered on time with great quality. At the end of the day, it has got to go to a customer. So it has to be of very high quality, and the customers depend on what we put out there. So all of that meets. That's the expectation, nothing less than that, right? So excellence to some extent is the expectation. Now, if you try to say something like, okay, if you do 10% more than that or 20% more than that, right, then that is exceeds. I think a manager should never do that. And that's one thing good that this manager did for me, is not to try to answer that question, because what that does immediately is it puts a cap. It puts a cap. You try to achieve that 20% better. That's it. That's your goal, right? You may have the potential to do 30, 40, 50% better. How do you know? How do you know where's the limit? You don't know. We don't know where our own limit is as people. And I've experienced that in life, both for myself as well as for people I've worked with, is that people can surprise you. People can do things that you don't expect them to do, that go way above and beyond, right? And honestly, that's got to be the benchmark for an exceeds. Not okay, I did 20% better than XYZ. No, that's not good enough. So give it your best, sort of do something that's really not expected. And I think that's honestly one of the things that's always driven me. 1991, I was in our Boston office, Lowell office back in the day. I had requested for a meeting with the VP of our division, Dr. Ajoy Bose. 6 o'clock in the evening, I was sitting in his office. We had a 30-minute slot. We were having the meeting, and midway through the meeting, the VP of marketing, his peer, sort of barges in. And without batting an eyelid, Dr. Joy Bose turned around to him and said, "Is it anything urgent?" He says, "No, but I need to talk to you about something." He says, "Fair enough. Once this meeting is over, I'll come back and talk to you." Something simple, something very, very basic. I was ready to walk up and walk out at that time, saying, here are the two very senior VP level people who need to talk to each other. I'm a lowly engineer. I don't have anything very important to talk. But he did not ask me to leave the room to talk to somebody more senior. He showed me as an individual respect, right? It made me feel important. It made me feel good. And to this date, I remember it. And there is obviously this famous saying, it is not what you say, it's not even what you do, but how you make people feel, that's very important, right? In every relationship, both at work and outside of work, with your peers, with your team members, with your seniors, in every respect, how you make them feel is important. How you treat them is important. Authenticity, sincerity is important. You can't fake these things. Dr. Ajoy Bose did not make it up in the moment to make me feel good. That's his character. That's who he was. 1992, same manager that I talked about in 1990. I go back to him and I said, okay, I've had 2 good years now, right? I want to talk to you about growth, right? How do I grow? How do I get promoted? How do I get to the next level? And in his classical way, he gave me another one of these cryptic lines. He said, dress for the part you want. Right. What does dress for the part you want mean? It's all about prepare for the role that you want. And actually go beyond that. Start doing the job. That's what really dress for the part you want means, right? Don't wait. Take initiative. Take initiative. Start doing the job. One interesting thing I realized in my life is that every time I've taken initiative and I've tried to do something above and beyond and do more in terms of contributing to the business of the company, nobody's ever stopped me. Nobody, not once. Now the question you've got to ask is, how much initiative have you taken? How much of an initiative can you take? How much more can you do? Right? So really the essence of this dress for the part you want is prepare for the opportunities when they come knocking the door. Once the opportunity is there, if you are not ready, you miss it. And there's only so many opportunities one can afford to miss. So invest in yourself, develop the skills, develop the mindset, develop the competencies, take initiative, build the track record, prove your capability, so that when the opportunity comes knocking, you are ready for it. 1993, India Center at that point in time was 70, 80 people, maybe. We had just, as a company, gone through a major reset. For the first time in Cadence's history, a COO, a gentleman called Leonard Liu. And Leonard Liu really said, okay, we've got this thing in India, it's good, we should build on it, right? So let's figure out how to do it. Now the challenge was, how do you build this thing, which is 60, 70 people? So we said, well, we're going to have to go and talk to the different business units and try to engage them in a conversation, see what can be done in India, gain their confidence, etc., etc. And the question was, who's going to do all of this? So I raised my hand. I said, no, I'll do it. I was, in today's hierarchy equivalent, I was a T3 at that point in time, which used to be called senior member of technical staff back in the day. So I started to go to the US and I started to, as they say, punch above my weight, going and talking to directors and group directors and VPs in trying to convince them that there was some value in investing in India and starting teams in India and identifying projects that could be brought that were low risk, not very high priority, just to get things started, small investments that we could build on, and said, fair enough, if we can get these done, we will talk more, but let's do the first project, let's give it a try. So I was an engineer and I was doing things that was completely, I'd never done before. I was way outside my comfort zone. But personally, I gained a lot from that. I learned a lot from that. I learned how to go and pitch an idea to somebody at a VP level, which means, again, when an opportunity comes, you got to grab it, right? You got to make the most of it. And unless you have the experience, you don't know what it brings to you, right? Another very important thing I learned through this experience, and that's an important message for all of you, at the end of the day, we are all sales guys. Every one of us is a salesperson. If you think you're not a salesperson, you are mistaken. Every one of us is selling something to somebody. Emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness. And you'll be surprised how much we think we understand each other and how little we actually do. So taking the time to understand who you are, what drives you, what motivates you, what impacts you in what way, that's self-awareness. Then the ability to manage your own emotions, right? Emotional intelligence is about managing emotions. It's about understanding other people's emotions. It's about empathy. It's about compassion. It's about all of those things. And I think in the workplace, EQ, for example, is, I think, as important, if not more important, than classical, cognitive intelligence or IQ. I have evolved a lot as a manager in my management style, based on some feedback that I got from some of the team members who were willing to open up and have the courage to give me feedback that I needed to be more aware of the impact that I was having as a manager, my actions, my behaviors. Again, coming back to that perception versus reality and all those things, the impact that my behaviors were having on my team members. So 1996 was another important milestone in my career. That was the year that our senior VP, head of worldwide R&D, asked me to step up and take the role as managing director for Cadence India and lead the Cadence India site. He gave me a one-line brief. He says, I don't want any part of my global organization to be a second-class citizen. So I said, okay, what does that really mean? That was my one-line brief. No MBOs, no nothing, just one-line brief said, go figure it out, make it happen. But obviously that meant that we needed to really build a center of excellence. That was a short way of interpreting that comment. And I've never done this job before. I have no idea what this job is. I did not know what doing this job good looked like and what I needed to do to excel in this job. So I did what I could do, which is I reached out to people I knew in the industry who were part of companies who I had always held as role models, right? Companies that I thought were doing a very good job of it, had very seasoned management at that point in time. You know, I'd always looked up to them in terms of some amazing best practices with respect to people and culture, and their head of HR, Adesh Goyal, kind of knew him, he was a friend. A few other people that I knew, I went and talked to them, said, what do you guys do? How do you do it, right? And I took the ideas and I said, some of these ideas make sense, they seem to be relevant for us. That'll help us attract and retain the best talent, that'll help us get the focus, because how do you build a center of excellence? Center of excellence is all about excellent people working together, right? At the end of the day. What they produce comes afterwards. If you don't have the right people, if you don't attract and retain and motivate and develop the right people, you've got nothing. So we said, okay, let's focus on the people side first. So went and talked to those guys, went and talked to a few more people, learn from them, right? So importance of network. The network, you can learn a lot from your network. You can benefit a lot from your network. So I think the network that I had built helped me at that point in time. So obviously you've got to learn from other people's experiences. That's key here, right? You can make your own mistakes. You will learn from your mistakes. You will have your own experiences. You'll learn from them. But that's not enough. Smart people, what they do is they learn from other people's experiences. They've already done it. They've already figured it out, right? We often believe that we are the first people to face a problem. That's not true. In most cases, somebody else has already faced that problem and found a solution. If only we make the effort to figure out who it is and find the answer and just go ahead and copy it. Take good ideas no matter where they come from, right? Because what matters at the end of the day is outcomes, results. 1997, feedback. Feedback is important, right? I was in a role where I was literally, they say it's lonely at the top, and I think to some extent it's right. Because I was the senior most person in India, my manager was in the US, my manager and I had interactions, once in 2 weeks for 30 minutes. That he could only see the outcomes. He could not observe me, give me any meaningful constructive feedback, none of that stuff. But if I don't get feedback, how do I know what I'm doing is right or wrong? Is it good enough? Can it be better, right? So I reached out to my staff at that point in time. I said, you guys are the closest to observing what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. So I want you to give me feedback, right? So that became a source of feedback for me that helped me understand what my blind spots were, what I was doing well, where I could improve, what could I do to help them and the organization be more successful. So feedback is very important. Now, giving and receiving feedback is not easy, right? But when you get the feedback, never, ever be defensive about it. Never fight it, even if you don't like it. So that's something I've learned. You come and give me feedback, I'm not going to argue with you, right? I may like it, I may not like it, I may agree, I may disagree. I'm not going to argue with you, right? I'm going to listen to it. Then I'm going to go back and process that feedback. I'm going to try to understand why you said what you said. If I need clarification, I'm going to come back to you and ask for clarification, ask for data points, ask for your observations, so I can fully understand where you're coming from. Why are you giving me that feedback? What are your observations on the basis of which you're giving me that feedback? Then I'll decide whether I want to do something about it or not. That's a choice I need to make. I don't have to accept every feedback. I don't have to act upon every feedback. But I have to receive it. I have to process it. I have to consciously make a choice what to do with it. So if you can build a group of people around you who can give you constructive feedback, it's a blessing. 1998, so I'm 2 years into this role as managing director, and we're saying, well, we've done some good work, we've stabilized the organization, we have successfully executed a bunch of projects. But then we said, how do we create sustainable differentiation for us, right? Because if we've already acknowledged that a center of excellence is all about the people to begin with, then what's next in that journey? And we said, well, culture. Culture is just how people the unwritten norms and how people work with each other. And you can have a strategy, your competition can mimic your strategy. You can have some tactics, the 3-4 month, 6-month delay, they can observe your tactics and they can replicate them. But the underlying culture that you develop, that's not something it's easy to replicate. So we invested in organizational culture. We started that in 1998. 1999, I think, or 2000 was the first time we entered into the DataQuest Best Places to Work survey and came out at the top of the list, and I think our culture had something to do with it. So 1999, Shane Robinson, the gentleman who'd given me the job, he decided to leave Cadence. And I reached out to him and I said, well, you're going to leave the company. Before you leave, any words of advice for me? And he made this one statement. He says, Jaswinder, you are an action-oriented person, right? You take initiative, you like to do things. But you have a lot of deference for seniors, right? You reach out, you sort of present your ideas, you want the idea to be blessed before you execute. And not all your managers will understand your ideas or have the confidence or give you the blessing easily. A lot of the people are not very decisive and will not be able to make a yes-no decision. And oftentimes it's said it's easier to say no than yes. You'll find enough people who will find faults in your idea and say no, but not enough who will say, yes, go do it, right? So he basically gave me this word of advice. He says, it is better to ask for forgiveness than to wait for permission. Go make it happen. If you believe it's right for the company, go make it happen. If the results are there, everybody will, get on board with it. Once in a while, you'll make a mistake and, the results will not be there. So it's better to, 1 in 10 times, take the risk, make the mistake, ask for forgiveness, but don't miss out on the other 9 opportunities. Again, it reinforces the fact that if you understand the strategy, if you understand the context, if you understand the priorities of the organization, and within that umbrella, if you've got ideas that you're passionate about, that you believe in, go make it happen. Just do it. So 2000 is the year that I got promoted to corporate vice president. And I say this with all humility. I was 37 years of age. I was and still am the youngest person to get promoted to corporate vice president in the company. Great news, bad news. What's the bad news? Where do I go from here? And in my case, right, it became obvious to me that at Cadence, the next level up would require me to relocate to the US, which is not something that I was willing to do for personal and family reasons. And so I had to go through a lot of introspection, self-reflection. I got a long road ahead of me. What do I do? Where do I go from here? Every one of us will get up to a certain level, and that will be different for different people, and there will be no more promotions after that. Eventually, everybody will hit a wall in terms of promotions. Now, what you choose to do at that point in time is up to you, right? And I really clarified in my mind what the road ahead would look like for me. And I came up with 3 or 4 guiding principles for myself. I said, I'm going to try to maximize on contribution, do what I can do. It's a long road ahead, right? I need to stay motivated, stay excited, stay happy, stay satisfied. How's that going to happen? I said, number 1, I got to work on things that matter, right? Things that are important to the company, things that create value and create impact. That's important. Number 2, I've got to keep learning and growing. I have a long road ahead of me. I cannot stagnate my learning. So work on things that matter, continue to learn, and have fun doing it. As long as these 3 things are met, life is good, right? Because what's kept me going for the last 23 years is the contribution part. How do I keep contributing? And those of you who know me know that I've done all kinds of crazy things in the last 23 years. That's because every experience enriches me, teaches me something, gives me new opportunities, allows me to do something different, learn, grow, and have fun. It's as simple as that. We know a lot, but do we apply all of it? And I'll again, based on my own learnings and my own observations, I think there's a lot more opportunity for us to apply what we've learned. I have worked with people much smarter than me, who know much more than me, who are much better read than me. And I learn a lot from talking to them, by interacting with them. But I see some of them fail to apply their own learnings. They intellectually, they know all the right things to do, but in practice, they're not able to do it. So, I mean, think about it this way. Is it good to have a knowledge of 100, an application of 10, or a knowledge of 30, an application of 20? Which is better? Right? So application is key. Be able to practice what you learn, be able to apply what you've learned. So that's very important. Aim high. This is a quote from Michelangelo that again inspires me a lot, right? It also ties back to one of the thoughts I mentioned to you early enough. Don't put a limit on yourself. Aim high, right? Don't get caught up, and encourage people not to get caught up into this morass of ratings and things like that. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Why are you looking for external validation from your manager or somebody else? Just try to maximize your own potential. Do the very best you can. Reach your full potential. That should be what should be driving us. That's Latin, but the English translation is simple. There will be obstacles on the way. No questions about it, right? Don't make that an excuse. And I love this quote, is I will either find a way or make one, right? Remember that every time something new happened, it had never been done before, right? Every time a record gets broken, it had not been broken before. Somebody broke the record, somebody did the new invention, somebody tried and did something new. And I think that's the winner's mindset that we must inculcate. Don't put limits on yourself, aim high, go out there, take the initiative, make things happen. The key is realize your full potential. That's the only thing you owe yourself. And anything less should be unacceptable.